Hello everyone, welcome to today's video, and in today's video we are going to give you guys an update about the Jeep and talk about some things. So today is Saturday, right before the fall, and I am not too happy about that because I never really got the chance to, take the doors off and, drive around without the top on and use my net thing, because I only really used it once. Or the mesh thing. I only used it once. So, it sucks that now I don't, summer's coming to a close and, well, we didn't get the chance to use the mesh sun visor thing much, but hey, that's what happens when you only need to go out like once a week now. As well, not a whole lot's going on. So if you're new to the channel, make sure to like and that you subscribe and that you hit that notification bell. So to give you guys an update, I got new tires. And to also tell you that the old 1991 Plymouth Voyager that was given to me for free by somebody who not going to really discuss, gave to me for free and all, it has been given to another owner, a completely new owner, and yeah. So you guys might be wondering, well, what about this van? So when I told everybody about this van project that I had, basically, like, I thought I could give that van a second life. I could fix it up, run again. It would be a project car basically. And what happened is I lived somewhere where I could get plates for it, right? Without having to put it through an enhanced inspection, which, as you know, is the killer of all older cars. Because, the way how they do state inspections is they don't really inspect much. Enhanced inspections are a different story. Enhanced inspections where they literally check over everything on a car, and if it doesn't pass the standard, well, guess what that car's gonna get? A failed sticker. And it's a pretty stressful thing when your car fails inspection, enhanced inspection. Because especially if you need plates or registration or stuff of that nature, right? So I had that for a little while, but then I moved somewhere where I was not able to get to pass through enhanced inspection because, well, I bought the Jeep, obviously, and my budget and everything, I can't necessarily afford to pay almost $200 a month for the insurance and to have to fix both the van and the Jeep at the same time. Where the axle runs from one to the other, it's got some surface rust to it. And yeah, so because it's got rust starting to come in, that is a cause for concern, because they make me have to replace all that. It's going to cost a pretty penny. Now, is it worth to do it on the Jeep? Absolutely. Was it worth doing that on the van? Probably not, because the van only has a value of less than $1,000 because of its age, mileage. They no longer make the parts for it. it just would have been a lot much more easier just to, have to do all that on the Jeep because, well, the Jeep is not exactly extinct yet, but, yeah. So that's what happened with the van is, basically everything underneath had to be replaced, this, that, and the other. And, so I went and got new tires for the Jeep because it needed new tires. The tires were dry rotted. The previous owner said that his son was the one that got the tires, but those tires were on there since 2016, or they were made in 2016. So if they bought it in 2016, then how did they manage to put bigger tires on since 2016? So I don't know the whole story with the previous owner and that Jeep. I don't know what the whole story is. I just don't know what the whole story is. I don't know if they decked the Jeep out and they put all the old parts back on and sold it, or I don't know. I don't know the story on that one because his son owned it. I know his son drove it. But then, why would you, if your son was driving it, why would you sell it against your son's wishes if your son didn't want to sell it? I don't understand unless the son got a new car. I don't know what the whole story on that is. Because, I don't know. Maybe the son was driving it since 2016. I don't know. But either way, those tires that were on there were from 2016. So, yeah. They weren't brand new LT 285, tires, which stands for light truck. Which is probably why the mechanic they usually take my Jeep to called the Jeep a truck. And I'm like, okay, guess it's a truck. Because it does have light truck tires, so guess it's a light truck, I guess you can say. But, with that being said, it was just going to cost us a lot more, it costed a lot of money just for those 285 tires, So, but was it worth it? Yeah, because the old tires were dry rotted, and the tires were kind of a little bit of the denominator for why, I started driving less than once a week. Yeah, so I used to go every Monday to see people, right? And, it wasn't really that close by. And one day it was like 94 degrees, and I told them, well, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it because it's too hot. Because, I was afraid that my tires were going to blow out because of the heat. And I was afraid that my engine was going to overheat because, it was that hot. Which, I took the precaution on that one, but they said, well, when it cools down, we'll have you do it again. Well, that hasn't happened. But my biggest concern was that my tires were going to blow out because they were dry rotted. And, it was apparent since August. And they said, well, recommendation to replace the tires due to dry rot. So that's what I did. So we took it to the tire place, and they had to use 4 of those big, large jacks just to jack it up because, well, mine has the 32-inch tires with that 2-inch lift on it. And, they had to use it. So that's pretty much what you got to use because you would need a pretty big jack to be able to jack it up if you need to change out your tires. But, the thing that you use to change out the tires, you can't even get to it because I can't take the thing out of the thing. So, yeah. So yeah, that's what happens when you have an older car. Stuff just sits and sits and sits and sits. And then when you need to get to it, you can't get to it. Or it won't, you can't, you basically have to replace the whole thing because it's so badly rusted out that you pretty much have to replace it. But, yeah. So anyway, so they changed out my tires and they said that my tire sensors need to be replaced. And they said my low pressure light was on. Now, I almost made the mistake of telling them no, because this was on my part. I'm very particular about who works on my cars. Like I go to the same mechanic. Because here's the thing. Some places that you go to, they may say, oh, well, your windshield wipers need to be replaced, when they don't necessarily have to, because they want, to spend a little bit extra money to say, hey, this needs to be replaced, when in reality, it doesn't necessarily have to be replaced right then and there. So that's something you got to be careful of when you go into mechanic shops. If it doesn't need to be replaced necessarily, then don't replace it. Otherwise, if you do, you just end up spending extra money. But you also have to be careful, because if they replace something and something else needs to be replaced, and then that could send you to have to go back to that shop to replace it. And that's what happened to me when I had my brakes done. So supposedly what had happened is my brakes needed done. My front brakes were completely wore out. Well, they went and replaced the front brakes, but not the calipers, because the calipers are dry rotting and they're rusted. So what happened one day is I was going somewhere and my brake caliper on the right side seized up. So I had to go and get that replaced. And but the rest didn't get replaced yet because they didn't seize up yet. Neither did the back brakes. Because I could show you the paperwork that I got from my recent inspection, or at least read it over to you. It says when you take your car into a mechanic's shop, the owner's mostly the one that you would talk to, but they have mechanic people that go and they do the work for that owner, right? So what they do is, somebody else always drives it, not the owner. Sometimes the owner would, but mostly the one that does all the work is the mechanics themselves. So what happens is they get an invoice number, and they get all the information and things like that, and they get like parts description, labor description, about what it costs and things like that, and and they also have to operate it on the road sometimes. But yeah, so what happened is I went through a state safety inspection, right? And they said, now by the way, my engine is a 3.8 liter V6 with a 231 cylinder. So I guess that's okay. But brakes, the left front was 10B. So I don't know what that means. And then the rear right brakes were 5B. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if they need to be replaced or what. Or they need to be considered replacement. Because they had to have lifted it up on the stand thing. They got like a lift thing where it lifts it up. They had to have done that in order for them to check it. So if there was anything else that they needed to replace, they would have let me know. Because, personally, if there's something in there that's rusted or dry rotted out, you probably should replace it so it doesn't break down later. Because, yeah. And then tires. Now, this was before I got my tires changed. The left front was 532, which means it was okay, but I needed to consider replacement. So that's what I did, right? They said recommend tires by next inspection due to dry rot. That's what I did. And then every time that you go and take it in, they always recommend that oil change happens at certain point of miles with synthetic motor oil. So yeah, but because I rarely drive, you know, I don't need to get the because technically not this week, but next week and the following week, I'll have to get an oil change, technically, from where I was last scheduled. But I don't need to get an oil change, because until that oil starts to turn like a darker color, I don't need to change it quite just yet. And I still have oil in it, so as long as that's okay, we should be able to be okay. But once it starts to change color, that's when I'm going to have to go and get the oil change. Because what happens is it changes color over time. And if it doesn't get changed, even though you have oil, it can basically cause problems. And you always want to make sure that your engine has oil, or else the mechanic's going to yell at you. They'll be like, once it gets below this line, you need to refill it. It's true. Because if you don't refill it, your engine's going to be out of oil, and then your car's going to break down. And then if your engine goes, then you basically got to replace the whole engine. Just like what happened on the van. So yeah, always make sure that you check your oil. Now, of course, with the coolant, that's a little bit different, because if you have to be careful when you turn that cap that goes right on top of that radiator. It's like a silver cap, and there's a little label on it. If you turn that, you'd be able to check the radiator and your fluid. Otherwise, you'd have to go and check it on the overflow tank, which doesn't have any coolant in it, because what happens is the coolant goes from the radiator into that overflow tank and then right back into the radiator again, according to what the previous owner of the van said. So yeah, so that's that. But other than that, I mean, just make sure that you got. But I don't mess with that radiator cap because I don't want to mess up something, so I just let the mechanics deal with it. Because the thing is, I can do some of those things, but when it comes to work like that, you have to make sure it's done properly, or else you could have more problems. So yeah, that's what I've learned. If you don't know how to fix something yourself, don't try to fix it, because you just might make it worse. Well, that is true. If anybody tells you, oh, well, Chrysler made vehicles junk, that's not the truth. Well, if anybody says anything about your car, whether it's Chrysler, anything, because I know that there's some people out there, like one time someone in my family said, oh, well, that guy with the DOT vehicle, it's a junk vehicle, because he had a Ford F-150, and it was new. I'm like, it's not junk. Your car's junk. Your car's only worth like $5,000, and it's a Honda. And because you put a whole bunch of miles on it and stuff. Here's the thing. Any car can be a junk car, whether it's Toyota or anything like that. It just depends on how well the person takes care of it, how many miles are on it, and how reliable it is. Your Toyota is not going to be reliable unless somebody drains the oil out of it. Then it won't be reliable, right? I mean, cars have problems. They all break. The only time that the car would be considered junk is if it's a brand new car and it starts to have problems. That's when it's junk. Because, yeah, your car is only reliable how well you make it reliable. I mean, is it worth spending a lot more money on a older BMW that has a ton of issues, when those issues are gonna make the car's value go down, then they're only gonna give you like 5,000 for that BMW. Yeah. So yeah. So anyway, so what I got here is a book. Well, a magazine, right? This is so for those who don't know, I got the same person who got me the van, the same person who bought these aftermarket LED headlights. The ones that I should have probably gotten were the original ones with the 3 LED lights and all. Those probably would have been the better ones because they don't seem like they're as bright. Because when you're going down the road and you see Jeeps with those aftermarket LED lights, they are so daggone bright. Like, I don't even know how these people get away with these lights. They're so daggone bright. And obviously, if you see on TikTok and other things like that, you get a bunch of people complaining about LED lights. If they're OEM, zip it. If they're not, that's when you can complain. But to say the least, LED lights are not going to go away anytime soon. We aren't stuck in the early 2000s, people, so stop complaining. But anyway, so yeah, so that's the story about that. Now, LED taillights, am I going to get those? Maybe, maybe not. Because the thing about it is that I don't know. I really don't know. I really don't know. I don't know. Because I don't know. The problem is with aftermarket stuff, you have to make sure that it's legal. If it's not legal and a state trooper or officer stops you, they can give you a repair citation. And if they don't give you a repair citation and they give you a regular citation, then you'd have to go to court. There's a mosquito in here. There's a mosquito in here. If you don't, here's, okay. If you get a repair citation, you obviously repair it, then the citation gets dismissed. If you get a regular citation, then you have to go to court, testify. And whatever reasoning for why you got that illegal aftermarket thing put on your vehicle, the judge is basically going to say, oh, well, you put that on your vehicle yourself. There's no legitimate reason for why you put that on your vehicle. So I'm not going to dismiss the citation. Have a good day. Boom. Done. So yeah, so that's why you need to consider looking up the laws before going out to these custom shops or whatever and putting this stuff on. Because them shops are not going to tell you that, oh, it's illegal in the state. If you get pulled over, you're going to be given a ticket. They're not going to tell you that. So always check before you do that kind of stuff because, well, you don't want to be the one who has to end up having to get that stuff removed and get citations and all that kind of stuff. You know, because unfortunately there are party poopers out there. I have party poopers in my family who were in law enforcement and things like that. And, yeah, so that's that. So, you know, that's why you need to be careful of what you put on your vehicle. Especially the window tints. The window tints are not worth it. They're not worth it at all. If it's not legal in your state, don't have them. Because you're just going to get stopped. And, yeah. You don't need to be out somewhere at dusk and see them orange lights on those police cars, and the next thing you know, boop, 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 boop. Yeah, you don't want that. So, that's why you got to be careful. You got to make sure that your vehicle's good, your driving's good, You'd be good. And so you might be thinking I'm over dramatic about the whole cop legal citation thing about your vehicle. The thing is that with window tints, that's nothing to mess around with. They will get you for your window tints. Doesn't matter if you paid $100 to get them on there. You have to pay $100 to get them off. It's just not worth it. You got to use your head. Just because they say, oh, well, the 2% window tints are not illegal. I'm not gonna tell you can't get them. No. Don't listen. If someone tells you that something isn't illegal when it actually is, that person probably isn't a very good advice person to listen to. Because chances are, it is. You don't want to listen someone else's word or whatever they say, oh, well, nothing's going to happen to you. Don't listen to that stuff. You are your own person. You are your own judgment. And so that is why, when it comes to making smart decisions about your vehicle, that's what it comes to. Because, yeah, I mean, when we got the window tints done on the van, I didn't have it for probably like 4 to 5 months before I had to get another vehicle. And the van would have been taken to a junkyard for probably for $200, $300. But you know what? That is why you need to be smart. You need to make your own judgment. Do not listen to other people. So yeah. Now, mechanic stuff as well. If it doesn't need to be replaced, don't replace it. But don't be like, oh, well, there's a rusted out gas tank. I'm not going to replace that. No, you got to replace that. You know, if it legitimately needs to be replaced, then replace it. If it doesn't need to be replaced, then don't replace it, obviously. And the reason why I say that is because I had work done on my old bicycle one time, went into a bike shop, and here's the thing, communication is important. If the mechanic or whoever you're working for just mumbles under their breath and they don't explain things clearly, they don't talk clearly, you know, a mistake could happen. You need to have clear and perfect communication. Perfect communication. You need to understand the fact that if they're going to do something, you need to know exactly what they're going to do. You know, if they're like, well, you want the 385 whatever, I'm just making up stuff, but you know, they need to explain to you what is a 385, you know, what is that, what does that mean, what does it mean when you get, you know, they need to explain to you, what this and this and this and this and this and this means. Like if you didn't know what synthetic motor oil was, you know, or versus regular oil. Now, of course, I know the difference, you know. If it's supposed to be synthetic, then you get synthetic, right? But that's not what we're talking about. You need to know exactly what they're saying, because one time I took my bicycle in at the bike shop one time to get my brakes replaced, right? And the guy was mumbling under his breath, not the friendliest type, and he messed it up completely. He put the pieces in the wrong order. So I had to go and fix it and replace it all because he messed it all up. Because, you know, yeah, so that's why very particular. It's a pain in the butt when you gotta do this stuff, you know? And it's just like what happened when I went to go get my tires. He didn't say, you know, and this guy, he was older too, you know, he didn't, you know, he said something about tread. Like I said, I don't fully understand what you are asking me, what you are saying. If you have to tell me exactly what you are talking about. Like for tires, do you want all season or do you want all terrain? Not, oh, do you want thick tread or thin tread? You know what I mean? You know, all terrain or all season. That's what I know best. Because I know the difference between an all-terrain tire and all-season tire. and radials and this, that, and the other. Right here, this is an all-terrain tire. An all-season tire wouldn't be a very good thing to put on a Wrangler, because you're not going to get as much good traction. If you're going to get a Wrangler with small tires, you might as well just buy a Jeep Grand Cherokee, because, well, you're not going to get any good performance, the best performance out of all season tires in a all-terrain situation. So you have to explain what it is that you're asking me, you know, and that's kind of the thing. You have to explain. You can't just say, oh, well, you know, you have to explain to me what exactly it is that you're asking, or else I may not fully understand the question, and then I tell you the wrong answer. You know what I mean? So that's the thing with me personally, is you gotta tell me. Like, the guy was, for the brake thing at that bike shop, was just like mumbling under his breath, wasn't talking very clear enough. And when I told him, oh yeah, I need new brake pads, he's like, yeah, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, I don't even know what you even just said. I'm like, new brake pads mean new brake pads. Doesn't mean what type of brake pads. You can clearly see what I need. Yeah, it's a pain when you don't know what they're talking about and they ask you a question like, it's brake pads. All you have to do is just get the brake pad that says it on there and just replace it out. You know, instead of saying something completely written in French and I don't know what it means. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's another thing. You have to have clear communication. You know, you don't want to say, oh, well, I'm going to get an all-new catalytic converter and then not say it's a catalytic converter. Then you're going to confuse the crap out of somebody. You know what I mean? So that's why you need to have proper communication when you are getting this stuff done. You know, communication is the key. Make sure everybody's on the same page, because if someone's not on the same page, then they complain, and then you're stuck. You just did all that work for nothing, basically. So yeah, so it's very important that you communicate and that you make sure that the customer and the person who's doing the work are on the same page. If they're not, that can, you know, cause some confusion. Like when I went and got my tire sensors done, you know, and I'm glad I did it, because like I said, I'm very finicky about about who does work on my cars. But I'm glad that I did, because I would have had a low sensor light. Now, they said they were going to do 4 sensor lights, right? You know, for the sensors, right? So they went and did the 4. Well, then they took off my spare, and they took off the tire completely. And so they took the thing completely out. And they're like, do you want to replace that too? Now, I didn't know. Because the thing is, with them bigger and heavier tires that they put on these Jeeps, is I've heard that the spare tire can actually get weighed down, and can actually start to weigh down on your tailgate or whatever. You know, so I didn't want them to replace it, because I could have had them replace it, but I didn't want the tire to wear down my tailgate, obviously. But yeah, like what I said, you have to have proper communication. That's the biggest thing of all. Is proper communication. Absolutely. Proper communication. You gotta make sure everybody's on the same page. You can't just like mumble or say a bunch of mumbo jumbo that somebody doesn't understand. Like, you have to make sure that they know exactly what you're talking about. You know, because yeah, I know about all terrain. You know, like I said, all terrain versus all season. You know the difference between the two. But when you say a bunch of stuff in mumbo jumbo, well, I may not know what the heck you're talking about. So yeah. But, I try to stick with the same mechanic just so that way, we got good things going on. They know about the history of my vehicle and all. Everything is all good. This is another thing as well. You have to look at the reviews. Because, now there are people that do have negative reviews on a business's page that aren't exactly the truth. But, it might just be one bad review that might not be truthful. But then if there's multiple other bad reviews, that is a sign that you shouldn't get your car done at that company. Because they may mess something up. Because, like I said, I've had things worked on, not just automotive stuff, but regular stuff at other companies. Like, remember when I had to replace my screen on my computer? The new screen they put on was defective, and so it wasn't exactly perfect. Well, they basically said I have to buy a whole new screen. Yeah. So, always look at the company's reviews before you get work done on something. Always look at the reviews. Hear me when I say this. Always look at the reviews. If it's a good company, they get good reviews, that's your sign to go to that place. If it's a bad company that gets bad reviews, that's a sign you get none of it, right? Because when I had to go get the van taken care of and all like that, I did not want that place to do the inspection because I looked at their reviews and they got some negative reviews. And chances are, if someone at the business has a bad attitude, or anybody has a bad attitude with anything, they could be like, oh, well, you're going to have to replace the entire car because in order for it to pass enhanced inspection. Yeah, I want to do that. So yeah, it's always important to check the reviews. If there's someone that's an owner or anyone who does anything and they have a bad attitude, they're probably not someone you want to work with. Even with things like cab companies. I had to deal with a cab company that was pretty bad reviews. I told the person who was setting me up at that company that, hey, they don't get really good reviews. I don't think they're going to work out because they might be late all the time. Turns out that was the case. Well, the owner is just a ray of sunshine and, also, is rumored, based on those reviews, to have a bad attitude. So how are you supposed to work with somebody that has a bad attitude? That's the thing. You can't work with somebody that has a bad attitude in a business, who just, wants to blame it on the customers for why things go wrong. That is a total wrong way to run a business. Like, if you have a bad attitude, if you blame your customers for why things go wrong in your business, then you should not have a business to begin with. Because those customers are giving you the money. You act like that, you won't have any revenue coming in. So that is why you, as the business owner, cannot behave like that. If you have a bad attitude towards your customers, your business is likely going to go under. Because the attitude is everything when it comes to running a business. And, if people are like saying things about you, saying that you have a bad attitude and stuff like that, you probably do. You never want to have a bad attitude when dealing with customers. You want to be as professional as possible to ensure that you don't lose customers. And that's exactly what happened with the cab company. They had bad attitude issues. They unfortunately would get lesser customers because of the overall handling of the situation. And it's unfortunate that that happens, but the only person that can fix that is the owner. They are the only ones that can fix it. And if customers feel that they are wrong
about how they run their business, well, that's them, you know. But never, ever have a bad attitude when running a business and blame the customers, because that's not how you get customers. That's how you lose customers. And then you can't afford to pay for your business and you have to shut down. It is unfortunate, but like I said, your attitude means everything in a business. So that is why always have a good attitude. And if something goes wrong, you be the good owner and you try to resolve it with the customer in the best way possible. But don't go beyond of blaming the customers for why things went wrong and, you know, just having a bad attitude. Yeah. So, yeah. That's my experience with bad attitudes and why people get a 3-star rating on their business. So yeah. So yeah. It's unfortunate. Anyway, that's pretty much all I'm going to be talking about in this video. I just want to give you guys an update about the van, give you guys an update about the tires, just explain my experience with shops and stuff like that, you know, because, well, you need shops to be able to get stuff done professionally, or else you're going to have to be changing those lug nuts all by yourself. And if you don't have the tools to do that, you can't do it, obviously. So yeah, so anyway guys, thank you guys for watching today's video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Well, comment if you want to, but anyway, I will see you guys in another video. See ya.